We're good? Excellent. All right. So, to start, I think one of the things that's really, really important for emerging managers, and even more experienced managers, the goal of meeting with a limited partner is to build trust and for them to say, yes, I'm going to hand over thousands or millions of dollars to you for you to do the right thing with this money. Right. And particularly for those who don't have a lot of experience, they feel that it's difficult to build that trust. So especially for someone who is just starting out, how do you build trust?
Well, you said something in the beginning, Vanetta, that's so important. You all have talked about telling your story. And I'm going to say something to you that I have a lot of catchphrases that I use in my business, but this one actually came from Rustin when we were talking about something a couple of weeks ago, and he said, "This is the story you're going to want to tell." And it's so important for each of you to decide on what is the story that you want to tell. And the way that you can move towards that story in basically for all of the decisions you're going to make in life is begin with the end in mind in terms of what is the feeling state you want to have once you've met that moment of achievement. And I sort of equate the moment of achievement to when a pole vaulter goes over the pole. That's not the moment of achievement. The moment of achievement is when you hit the pad, when you're satisfied. Even if you knock the crossbar down, you've succeeded because A, you haven't impaled yourself, and B, you've landed in the appropriate spot, right? But we tend to think more of what are the mountains we need to climb in order to get to that point, and how energetically is that different? Oh God, all the stuff I've got to do. Right. And that's true, of course. But if you don't have the motivation of getting to that point of achievement, it's going to be a hard slog.
Right.
So in terms of building trust, if you know the story you want to tell and you tell it authentically, and this is one of the struggles that entrepreneurs in particular have, is that they end up telling someone else's story. The story you think you should tell versus the story that is right for you to tell. And the distinction in that is, I'm going to give you a high-tech illustration here real quick, which is one of the things I start out with. And Vanetta and Rustin, you can't answer this question because y'all know the answer. But I'm assuming that the majority of you have seen a photograph of an iceberg above and below the water, right? You've got the part at the top that's the size of Manhattan and the part at the bottom that's the size of Montana. This is an apt analogy for the way your mind works. So it's going to be backwards for you, but here's my iceberg art. Above the water are your results and patterns. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about today is how you handle rejection. And primates, our brains work on the principle of staring at trouble. So we tend to cumulatively put together all of our rejections and have the expectation that that's what we're going to get, right? So once you believe that something's going to happen, you're essentially looking for it. And right underneath the surface is your beliefs, which are the things you've been taught about what it means to be you in the world. And you learn that before you even know you're learning anything. And so here's the challenge. And I want somebody to be brave and unmute and give me what they think the answer is. There is one motivating factor for everything that a human being does. Everything that you've been taught and everything that you believe is based on one organizing principle. Anybody have a guess about what it is?
Don't be shy. Don't be shy.
I was going to say, you heard the brave thing, right? I swear it won't hurt. Somebody take a stab.
I'm going to go out there and guess social acceptance.
And what do you feel if you don't have social acceptance?
Fear, loneliness.
Fear. Bingo! Oops, fear. Camera. Yep. Fear. It is the organizing principle for everything that we're taught. This is a whole nother lecture, but just let's take it on an article of faith that that's the case. And so if that's true, and you know that that's true, then you have the opportunity to control how you interact with your own fear. Does that make sense? Okay. So if you know what your fears are, if you know how to use them to your advantage to craft the story that you want to tell, you automatically create trust.
Ooh.
That's your formula right there. Key to life. You're welcome. Thank you for coming to my 30-second TED Talk.
No, I love that. And I think to that end, what is rejection then? If all of these things are based, obviously it feels like an expression of fear or some sort of embodiment of fear. What is rejection and how do you deal with that? And is it sort of the opposite of building trust? How are they related?
Actually, they are parallel. That's a very, very good question. Okay. And this is going to be one of the chapters of my forthcoming, hopefully someday, book. And that is this, that rejection boils down to one of two things only. One, if rejection comes from someone who doesn't know you, it can't be about you.
Ooh.
How could it? Logically speaking, it's impossible. Therefore, you have the opportunity to accept rejection from someone else. And there's a page in the workbook on how to manage no, but you can accept that as just a thing that happened.
Right.
And
very much so in this industry.
Right. It's a thing that happens. And so you can come to what I call essential neutral around rejection as simply a thing that happens. And one of the illustrations that I use is about Thomas Edison. And I almost wish this story wasn't about him because I won't swear, but it turns out he was sort of a horrible human being. But this is a really, really good thing to keep in mind, that as they were trying to create the light bulb, they tried many, many, many different things to create the filament and kept failing. And it's apocryphal, but apparently one of his assistants came in one day and said, Dr. Edison, we've failed. We've tried 10,000 things and nothing has worked. And he is supposed to have said, but no, don't you see, that's the good news. Now we know 10,000 things that don't work.
Right.
So again, if you're rejected by somebody who doesn't know fully what you have to offer or what good you can do for them, then they're not your people. And there is enough to go around. We're taught a poverty mindset that says that if you don't win this particular round, then that means you won't win. And it isn't true. When you are clearer about what you offer and how you want to work in the world, then the hassle tax that a lot of us put up with just to get the win no longer feels important.
Mm.
When you know your story, the people who are not good for you will no longer look good to you.
Wow.
And the other thing, so the first one is rejection from somebody who doesn't know you is not about you. And the second thing is rejection from someone who does know you is them doing you the favor of not wasting your time. Does that make sense?
Very, very much.
It is the simplest logic that very smart people will try desperately to complicate. We'll work real hard to continue telling a story that doesn't work for us.
It's really because we are told, and I think this is entrepreneurs, not even entrepreneurs, even people going into job interviews, you're told sell yourself. This is a part of what you do.
Exactly. Thank you so much for saying that, Vanetta, because when I work with people on career development stuff, one of the things that I teach them that really does apply to the sort of work that y'all do is that there's, going back to the thing we just learned a couple minutes ago, the one thing that the person across the desk is saying to you, whether it's a job interview or you pitching them a service, is please don't hurt me. Please don't be the person who's going to ruin my reputation. Please don't be the person who's going to make me lose something. Please don't be the person that I'm going to regret working with. Everybody is saying the exact same thing. And when you're aware of that, and you can have compassion for it, because I'm certain at times you felt the same way, then your communication becomes less stilted, less fearful on your side of the desk, and therefore, again, is far more likely to earn trust.
That's good. That's really
I know, right? Once you know this stuff, your life gets so much easier.
So much easier. And you're like, why didn't someone tell me this when I was like 11 and, you know, change the course of my life? And I wouldn't have bothered having such low self-esteem.
I know.
School.
Right? Yes. Yes. It would, right. You could have walked a completely different path. At the same time, though, you wouldn't be where you are right now.
Exactly.
I mean, I firmly believe that regret is an incredibly wasted emotion. You know, just like worry, it keeps you busy doing nothing.
Right. No, that's true. That is very, very true.
Chalk it up to experience and make a different choice.
Right. And I want to go back to something really interesting that you said that I had written down, you know, about being clear on what you want in the world.
Yeah.
So what is the process of setting an intention? Is it actually as simple as saying like, all right, I want to do this. And how do you hold yourself accountable to that?
The answer to the first question is no. It is not just, I wish, because if that worked, we would all be, you know, rich and gorgeous and completely successful in every possible way. It's not how it works. I am a huge, huge fan of neuroscience, and writing or creating intentions should be, I believe, based in how your brain actually works. Now, I mentioned the thing about how the organizing principle for most of us, until we're aware of it, is fear. Primates will stare at trouble. That's how we have survived when other species are evolutionarily far more successful than we are. We may be smarter, but we're not more successful, as it turns out, in terms of sustaining our abilities in the world. So intention is about framing the thought that you want to have in a way that your brain will readily absorb and repeat. Your brain loves rhythm, rhyme, and repetition. So I won't stand up, but I'll and again, Rustin and Vinod, you can't answer this question. So if I put my hand on my hip and my other hand like this, and I do this, what am I? Go ahead,
Teapot.
Denise. Exactly. And why do you know that?
I was wrong.
Oh, you were wrong.
Because I read the because I read the little
ahead.
because I read the prep. I'm sorry. That's
Nice one, Brendan.
I'm a little teapot. There was a song.
Right, exactly. Because you repeated that a gabillion times when you were younger, right? So it becomes second nature to you. And I will say, I've been at this for 21 years. I have never done that. And cross-cultural, cross-generations, you name it, I've never gotten a wrong answer. We know that it's because we have integrated it. So your brain loves rhythm, rhyme, and repetition. Writing an intention is about crafting a statement that you can come into agreement with. And so that means crafting something that is based on the pleasure center of your brain and something that you can agree to move toward. So, and you will also notice in the workbook, the PMS model, which is purposely crafted to be easy to remember. But it is basically that you will write your intentions on the structure of positive, measurable, and specific. And the tricky bit is that the vast majority of our wants are don't wants in disguise. And when you pay attention to the way you craft something, it very often is, well, what I want is for not fill in the blank.
Right.
And that then will gear your neurology to seek the thing you don't want. So the hardest part of this whole process is catching yourself crafting a don't want as a want. Right? And so in your industry, Vanetta, give me an example of something that would be an intention.
So something like, ooh.
Does anybody have one they'd like to work?
No, I was like, is there something? Because I know everyone is trying to raise capital and get people to believe in them. But if there is someone who wants to workshop this in real time,
let's do it.
Let's do it. It's a safe space, I promise, aside from the fact that this is being recorded and will go to everyone who's on this call.
Well, I guarantee you it'll be fun, it'll be easy and painless, I swear.
So Bonnie, give me some more like definition of what you're looking for. I'm not picturing that yet.
So in terms of your making the deals you want to make, to bypass rejection, to have the feeling state that you want to have in the end, which I'm assuming is something in the neighborhood of, I want to feel satisfied and fulfilled in my endeavors, then what would be an intention that is part of that solution? Give me an example of a specific thing that you'd like to make happen.
This is probably too big for what you're asking for, but I mean, is it as simple as figuring out a concise way to explain your differentiation in the marketplace? Or is
nice.
that,
Oh, that's a good one. And I thank you very much for using a really important word in that, which is simple. Trust me. It is always, I'm sorry?
I said it was a fluke that I got a good word there in there. It was just anyways, I'm sorry.
Well, no, it's fate though, because trust me on this, it is always simpler than you think. Always. And I'm not even talking about Occam's razor. I'm just saying that smart people will complicate things up as much as they can because we find value in complexity.
Right.
When the opposite is actually true. When you allow something to be simple, that's another way that you breed trust. We use a lot of jargon. I spent a lot of time in organization development, and I got so weary of people asking me to provide the product of the moment. They're all the same, by the way. They just have different names. And I was like, this is not authentic. And the reason you're struggling with it is because it doesn't fit in your mouth. So what we're looking for is the language that will fit in your mouth. So in this particular scenario, once you have crafted the perfect way of explaining what you do, what would it feel like? What is the feeling state that you would have?
I would assume relief, ease, the ease of delivering the speech and quite frankly, not to beat it up, but the authenticity that, I guess I'm going to go back to ease, the ease in delivering the presentation.
Those two words are so important to write down and have in a place where you can see them, where your subconscious mind will be soaked in them without you having to try to focus on it. Relief is the sign of resolution, and ease is the thing that will bring you the positive energy that you then will communicate to people. When I figured out as a therapist that my purpose is to help you understand the truth about yourself and to learn to love it, and 95% of everything you say to and about yourself is factually incorrect, and I can prove it. When those two truths came to me, everything else fell into place. And so it's important for you to identify who you are in your own hero story and focus on, once you've figured that out, it will be easy and it will be a relief because you won't have to struggle anymore. People give things like writing a personal mission statement a really bad rap. And I'm like, why would you not? It makes everything so simple, because I sort of imagine it as like the roof over all the work that you do. So automatically 50% of every opportunity or decision that comes towards you is resolved, because it will either fit under that rubric or it will not. Half of your woes already off the table. Wouldn't that be a relief? Right? And so if you're saying, I want the relief and ease of the perfect communication of my purpose, then put that in a positive, measurable, and specific structure. First of all, I am striving for ease. That's positive. Not, I don't want to struggle anymore. That's a don't want, that a want that's a don't want to disguise.
Right.
So I want this ease. I am going to 80% of the time, which is the measurable. And you want something to be measurable because then you know when you've succeeded at it. And specific is important in terms of what your interpretation of success is for whatever your desire is. I'll give you an example that comes from when I do couples work. Very often when people are upset, one or the other of the partners will say, I just want a hug. And I will say, oh, show me. And then people look at me like I'm nuts. Like, what, have you never seen people hug before? What are you talking about? But everybody has a different need. And I've had so many couples who are like, well, if you just told me this 20 years ago, we would have solved half of our issues. So I'm asking you to figure out what that feeling is like for you. What is that sensation of relief and ease? And then put that into the structure of how you present yourself. Anybody have any questions about that? No. Okay, so
Yeah.
positive. Okay,
Terry.
Terry.
Just a quick question. How do you how do you think about it if your feeling is that the only thing that will give you ease is achieving the result that you're trying to achieve? How do you break down that? Because that obviously can't be the end, because then we'd all be neurotic.
Absolutely. And we definitely want to move away from neuroses, because we have plenty of that. Right. We try. Exactly. And I'm fond of saying that you're going to resolve all of these issues roughly 30 seconds before the great cosmic bus comes around the corner to collect you. Right. So, but you want to get as close to that as you possibly can. So thank you. That is a very, very powerful recognition. And the answer is in the question. That the solution is to start with that frame of mind. The acceptance that what you are doing is what you're supposed to be doing. Now, I sometimes run into difficulty with this from a philosophical perspective when I say you can come to acceptance of everything that's happened in your life up until this point as everything happens as it should. And there are all sorts of arguments about, well, what about Hitler? We're not talking about that. We're talking about you being able to use everything that has happened in your life in a constructive and logical way, rather than resisting it, because physics says there is no moment other than this one.
Right.
So, and Denise? Oh.
Go ahead, I'll ask my question once.
Okay. For better and worse, primates are the only species that can drag the past into the present and make it real again. If you are remembering, if you have a memory and it causes you to have a strong physical and emotional experience, it's because you're bringing the past into the present. And you can train yourself to not do that. And you can look at the endeavor, Terry, as the reward. When we get caught up in, well, if I don't get X and that means it's a failure, then that not only is that not motivational, but it discounts the progress that you have made.
Right.
And don't we get enough of that from other people? Yeah, I saw that look of recognition, like, well, kind of, yeah. So don't do that to yourself. Denise, what was your question?
It kind of tied into what you just said, but back to what you were saying about humans being smarter than animals, but
Oh, I didn't say that.
well, not smarter, but just basically in comparison to how we use our minds.
Yeah.
And I would venture to say that we kind of use more of an intellectual approach, whereas animals use more of an instinctual approach to things.
Right. Right.
And it's like you were just saying, training your thought process. So we can use our instincts if we trust them, but we also have to train them to be more positive based on our positive experiences versus our negative experiences. And once we trained ourselves to trust ourselves, we can make better decisions based on our positive experiences.
That is true facts right there.
Okay.
Right there. Because when you think about it, you have been trained to think what you think already, which means you can learn.
Right.
And anything that you've learned, you can relearn.
Right.
Good news, bad news of the human mind, we will complicate things up at every turn. And it is a matter of training to notice your thought process and course correct.
Right. One of the things that I've been telling myself along these lines is that failure is not possible. Because I think, and perhaps it's because as a writer, I wind up reading kind of a lot of things, and it's just the nature of the way literature works, is that inevitably, yes, the story comes to a close, perhaps someone or multiple people might die in it, but at the end of the day, the story exists, and that's kind of the point. So at no point would you be like, oh, this just plumb didn't work out, because you read that story.
Right.
So something obviously worked out because that story exists. Right. And I think that's been a very much of a relief for me, especially as an entrepreneur, trying to redefine what success means for me.
Yes.
That sure, it might not mean, all of the things that, fine, making a certain amount of money or having a certain number of clients, but if it means that I am making an impact, that I have an audience who's interested in what I have to say, and that if that audience is just me and currently my unborn child, who is a captive audience regardless, then that means that that's a success for me.
Right. Right.
Or as Will Smith would say, fail forward. There's no such thing as a failure. It's a growth. You're failing forward.
Exactly. Exactly. There is no failure. And one of the things that we get caught up in is stuff that we, air quotes, have to do.
Right.
Specifically, what we have to do in order to decide that we're a success, what we have to do based on our various roles in life. There are exactly 2 things in this life that you have to do. And BT dubs, everybody says pay taxes. And I'm like, that's not true. We know a lot of people who don't, but there are only 2 things that you have to do. Anybody want to venture a guess of what they are?
Be born and die.
Thank you. Breathe and die. We're going to assume the born part because you're already here. But yes, you have to breathe and you have to die, and everything else is choice. 100% choice. So when you run up against that resistance, which is totally understandable, that says, yes, but I am fill in the blank, I'm not discounting that those things are true, but they can't be the defining thing that keeps you stuck. I mean, they can be. People do it all the time. Right. But it doesn't make sense to make that the case. Because has that helped you so far?
Right.
Probably not.
Good points. Very good points. Does anyone else have more questions? Because I could certainly ask another or 2, but I definitely want to open the floor and give time for everyone else to take advantage of the fount that is Bonny's knowledge.
I got an answer for everything, trust me.
So if no one else has a question, one thing I will ask, and so after this, we're going to put you in breakout rooms so then you can get to know each other better. And if you do have to go, I will say now, come back next month. We're going to have a slight change in date and time. We're going to be on Tuesday, June 15th, instead of the first Wednesday of the month. I'd be interviewing Jerry Harmon of Avante Capital. She was the founder of Avante. They were SBIC of the Year in 2019. It's going to be a really, really awesome talk, especially about how she built a really dynamic and diverse team as well. So if you're interested in the SBIC process, the fundraising process, the building a diverse team, please come back June 15th, 12:30 p.m. Eastern to have this chat with Jerry from Avante Capital. But before we send you all to breakout rooms, one question that I know is on the minds of, if not someone in this room, but definitely on those who will be watching a recording, is how do I, and it obviously relates to what you were just talking about, thinking of it as a scenario of that vicious circle of, I think more people are familiar with you have to have a job to get a job.
Right.
There is I'm trying to build a track record, but I need the funds to build the track record.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that there's obviously, this is something that a lot of first-time managers especially face. And it's something that I think, frankly, keeps a lot of people from even coming into the industry, because you could just wind up spinning around in circles. What would you say to, and I know this will probably wind up repeating some of the things that you have said, but speaking specifically to those who are like, well, how is feeling something going to help me when people keep telling me no, but I can't actually get going because of just the way that things are structured? I feel like I'm ramming up against the institutions of society.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yes, it is a very, it's a simple answer, but it's also a very deep answer. And that is, again, when you can develop the story that you want to tell, you are far more likely to influence someone simply through your own enthusiasm than sitting back and sort of hoping that they'll be influenced. I don't know how this is gonna sound about me, but when I was back in the business of getting jobs, I've never applied for more than one job at a time. And I've never not been hired for a job that I was interviewed for. And I may not have gotten every interview that I wanted, but I've never not been hired through an interview. And that, I believe very firmly, is because I know how to tell a story. I know how to tell the story that the person across the desk wants to hear. And I'm also very, very clear that I am not for everybody. When you try to be the right thing for everyone, you are the right thing for essentially no one. Because if you're not right for you, you're not going to draw to you the people who are right for you. Does that make sense? It sounds like a fortune cookie, but it is math. Genuinely, it's math. That if you're aware, and it's so funny. I've been doing this big paper purge thing. So I went through all of my files and I thought, you know what, all these marketing programs that I was looking at like 20 years ago, I'm just going to shuffle those off. Everybody says you have to use pain points. You have to talk to the person that's in front of you about how they're going to lose, they're going to miss out if they don't go. And oh my God, all of the false stuff that we see in messaging promotion in the world now. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry because it is playing on people's fears. And when you can learn to scrub out the fear from your story, people want to hear it. Just think about it. When someone is desperate, like you all are going to be doing some networking. Back in the day when we used to do this stuff in person, and you're walking around in a networking room and you notice that everybody else is as desperate as you are. How much business gets done in that room? I don't know about you, but none for me, right? So don't spend your time in the endeavors that up until now have not worked. The whole, you go to the doctor and say, it hurts when I do this. What's the answer? Stop doing that. Don't put yourself in that position, but do become comfortable with your actual story. And if any of you are familiar with Simon Sinek, who wrote the book Start With Why, now there are excellent. There are a bunch of different versions of it, but this is such an essential truth that instead of trying to figure out all of the how, like I am aware that I am completely ignorant of the nuts and bolts of your industry. But what I do know is that when you can begin with, why am I doing this in the first place? And I don't even care if in the end result is, I just want to be filthy rich. I mean, this is not a virtue contest by any means. But if that's what you want, then you craft your message to that end. When you're disingenuous about it and just think about this in your own life, you can smell that stuff, right? You know, somebody who's coming at you with a false message, you're not going to trust them. But if you come at it with an earnest intention, whatever that intention may be, like come work with me because we're both going to get filthy rich, or we're going to be able to use our funds to do X, whatever that thing may be, then again, you are going to find the people that you want to work with and who want to work with you. And never feel bad if someone passes on your story because they are genuinely not your people. And hear, at the very least, hear my voice in the back of your head that says, do you really want to climb that mountain?
Right.
Is this struggle really going to get you where you want to go? Probably not. If it hasn't up until now, it's not going to.
I cannot think of a better note to wrap things up on. Thank you so much again for being here, Bonnie, and for just showering us with your wisdom. And I do hope this was, no, I know for a fact that it was helpful, so I'm not even gonna say I hope it was helpful because I know it was. And I know it was.
You know that I love my work more than should be allowed.
Exactly.
Honestly,
exactly.
If there was a lot of break for loving your work, I would have broken it long ago. So thank you very, very much for having me. I know I'm going to end up in one of the breakout rooms, so I'll be happy to answer any additional questions there as well. My contact information is on the last page of the workbook that I sent. If you have any questions at all about what is presented there, please don't hesitate to drop me a line.
Wonderful.
Okay, I'll be here to pull everybody back out of the matrix. So go ahead and.
All right. Thank you all.
I'm going to take my blue pill right now. Here